Welcome back to New England Living. I'm Rachel Holt. Up next, we're heading to Charlestown to check out the art and craft of bookbinding with Harcourt Bindery's Robert DeCristoforo. Robert, it's really cool to be here. This is the oldest traditional hand bookbindery in the U.S. What goes on here?
We do leather presentation bindings, boxes for our first editions. We do restoration, and we also do binding of city and town records like vital records like birth, death, and marriages for the cities and towns in Massachusetts.
In this business, as things have moved to machines, what makes you do things by hand here? What's the difference in the process?
The equivalency from a machine-bound book to a hand-bound book is night and day. We use goatskin leather that comes from England, 22 karat gold, acid-free adhesives. We use acid-free papers, acid-free boards to keep the quality high. We have brass tools for finishing, and we still hand-set type for all our gold finishing and stamping.
So you are still using those traditional methods that you would have found back in the day?
Yes, absolutely. If you want a high-quality leather-bound book, it has to be done by hand. It has to be done traditionally the way it was done in the early 1900s.
Still doing it the old-fashioned way is Harcourt binder and leather forwarder Frank Jones.
Frank, you've been here 30 years. We're at your workstation where you are in action, so what are you doing here?
I am covering a book. This is a half binding. Roughly half of the book is covered in leather. I've pasted up a goat skin, or part of a goat skin anyway, and I've already done the corners, as you can see. And now I'm going to cover the rest of the book. As you can see, I've capped the book with paper because the leather is wet and the leather dye is on my fingers, and it'll get on the edges of the book and sometimes even in between the pages if I'm not careful. It's kind of a protective measure, and that capping, of course, is removed before we send it to the customer. So I'm now kind of molding the leather. The leather constantly wants to return to its original state, which is flat.
And you're constantly moving. There's a lot of action going on.
Exactly.
What makes the difference of doing this by hand as opposed to using machines?
I would sort of compare it to the same way an oriental rug often has minor imperfections. A rug made by machine is never going to be as interesting as one made by hand. Same thing goes for leather binding. It's
really those human touches that make it special. And I find it fascinating, the tools that you're using, these do not look new.
No.
Tell me about that tool. I mean, this must have been what they were using traditionally.
Yes, this is a band nipper. The jaws are made of nickel, because otherwise the interaction with the leather, and if it were iron, the nickel does not darken the leather or cause it to discolor in any way. And now I'm using a string to make the traditional early 20th century style headband that you see on most of our books.
There's a lot of different skills
exactly, yes.
at work there, and
right.
You can see them in play at the different workstations throughout. So describe the layout of this facility and what goes on here.
The books get stripped. If there needs to be a repair done on the sewing, that's done. The sewing frames that we use are the same frames that they used 500 years ago. As a matter of fact, you could drop a binder in here from the year 1600 and they could probably start immediately. That's how little has changed, actually. After it's had its end papers put on, you'll see here some of the fancier marbled papers. It then gets gilded, usually by me, and then it gets rounded and backed. I cut the boards for it, I line the back, I select the different animal skins depending on what kind of leather people want. It then goes onto the finishers, and the finishers do the polishing, they do the tooling, and it gets sent to the client.
And because the work is being done by hand, each book is a little different, and it ends up being its own piece of art in a way.
That is correct.
A really beautiful look to some of these books is edge gilding. Now, what goes into that?
Well, we use foil. We apply an adhesive-backed foil onto the damp edge after it's been sanded and apply heat. And then we remove the mylar part of the foil, and hopefully the gold part stays.
The important
and this is very typical of books of the early 20th, 19th centuries. Previously, you'd more likely see books that were colored or sprinkled with some sort of dye. The gilding is actually sort of a more recent thing.
This uses foil, but people are using real gold here. So what is it like working with that material?
Well, I'm a forwarder, so I personally don't get to do that here, but the finishers do, and they're using 22 karat gold. It's very difficult. There's a lot of precision that goes into it. Most of the time, the finishers, that's really all they do because they have to be so good at what they do.
What is the current state of hand bookbinding in the US?
Actually, I think it's very good. Young people are interested in the craft, and they're going to bookbinding schools like the North Bennett Street School here in the North End, and graduating and getting jobs at places like this, or at universities, or at conservation labs. This is sort of a craft revival that's been going on since the 60s, which is still continuing right through this day.
For someone in your shoes, you're using tools that they used over 100 years ago, and you're keeping this tradition alive. How does it feel to be in that role?
I learned from the people who taught me, and I'm teaching the people that are working with me, and it's just sort of a natural process where the knowledge gets transmitted from one generation to the next.
And judging by all the books that are lined up with work to be done here, you can tell that you're pretty busy and popular.
Exactly, you are correct.
Having done this for decades now, what do you enjoy the most about this line of work?
I would say creating beautiful objects every day. I actually look forward to coming in every single day because I'm making stuff and making beautiful things that people will appreciate.